This is the Level Up Podcast. I'm Taylor Petrinovich.
And I'm Kelly Gilster of 618 Studios.
And we are on a mission to help filmmakers level up their businesses and their craft so they can make more and work less.
We want to help you confidently take your business from mainstream to luxury, and it all starts right here. Well, hello everyone. Thank you again for listening in on another conversation with my girl Taylor. Taylor, how are you?
I am great. I am officially done with weddings for the 2023 season. So I'm, figuratively popping bottles of champagne and laying on the couch until next spring when I thaw out and I'm ready to tackle another wedding season.
That just feels so refreshing. We have had seasons where it's kind of just a slow roll from like maybe we shoot like a New Year's Eve wedding and then we roll into one in a couple weeks in January, and like you never quite get a break. And as nice as that is on our bank accounts, it is also really nice to just have a break. So we ended our season in mid-October. This is actually the earliest we've ever ended in our 13 years. And we started a little earlier. We have one in February, and that one will be really great. But it's really nice. I'll have 3 months, so November, December, January. And I think that feels about right for what I can tackle throughout the year, just with like family life and everything that we have going on over here in Level Up. And, as many of you guys know, that Paul and I have a commercial side to our business too. So it's just nice. A good 3 months break to reset, refresh, get excited again, and kick that burnout out the window.
Yes, so true. And I mean, we're very clear about our mission here at Level Up, and we are trying so hard to help people avoid that burnout. And I think scaling back from doing like 30 weddings a year down to you did 11 this year, I did 9. I think we were both significantly less burnt out than we would be at this time of year had we done like the highest number of weddings that we ever have before, So I think that really, really helps. But we're going to be talking today a little bit about something that I think a lot more people in the industry have been experiencing lately. And that is kind of this new category of vendor being brought on for a wedding day that really does affect everybody. And we kind of want to talk about some etiquette when it comes to that. So whether you are coming across that as a filmmaker or photographer, or you're being brought in as this vendor type, the do's and don'ts and kind of our thoughts behind it. So Kelly, what are we talking about?
Yes, I'm really excited for this conversation because it's something that is so new, like you said, in our industry. And I know that we're going to see it more and more. And the biggest thing, even as we level our businesses up within the industry, is really being collaborative as a whole. We always say like competition kind of happens at the bottom, but true collaboration happens more at the top, and kind of ebb and flowing with the changes within the industry as you rise into that premier market, entry-level luxury, mid, upper, ultra, and beyond, or whatever it may be. One of the things that we're seeing a lot is vendors bringing on their own behind-the-scenes video teams. And I want to just kind of clearly state like what this is. It's not a content creator. So this isn't someone who's walking around with an iPhone. Either a vendor team brought someone on for content creation, whether that be the planner, maybe it was the photographer, maybe the bride hired like a content creator. We've also had that too. And we're not talking about that today. We'll probably get into that topic, I think, Taylor, on a future episode. I think that'd be a great one to discuss. But this is an actual other professional video team being brought in to capture the day on behalf of another vendor, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we see this a lot with florists, with planners, with photographers or even other videography teams who want that behind the scenes of how they approach a wedding day. And as we know, a lot of times it's already a little overwhelming, the number of bodies and professionals that we need to collaborate with and work friendly with and look out for, and to make sure everyone's getting what they need on a day. And having an additional, one or two people can come with a set of challenges. And I think that there's a very definitive line of ways that we can go about doing this in ways that are, I would consider, like maybe a taboo or like a no. So we're gonna kind of share some of our opinions so that if you run into this, or if you're brought on as behind the scenes, you can kind of do it gracefully.
Yes, and I really have not heard anyone talk about this yet. I think I've seen some things on social media, so I feel a little bit nervous, kind of laying out the ground rules of where we feel etiquette should, be laid out. Taylor, I don't know about you. Like, I feel like it's like, not that we're like tackling this whole new topic, but kind of, because it's so brand new.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But you know what? I think it's kind of great to get ahead of it, though, before habits and routines and the norm is set. I think it's kind of good to address things as they're fresh so that us as an industry can kind of collaboratively decide how to best go about it before it just kind of like gets away from us, you know? So I think that it's better to talk about it now than in 5 years.
That's very true. Okay, so this behind the scenes concept, right? We actually have advised students of ours in our mastermind group that it's okay to, it's actually a really good opportunity to be able to be in the room in that level of event and work with that level of production. I think that it's a really great experience builder for filmmakers. And also it's a really great way to build relationships with those who have been brought on, right? So I'll be first to say that like we don't necessarily think that this is a bad thing when we have had students come to us and ask if this would be appropriate to do. We say that it's fine, but it needs to be done within certain parameters and etiquette. So Taylor, do you kind of want to take maybe that first point of what we advise to our students?
Yes. So I also kind of want to lay one more distinction. So I have actually done some behind the scenes for planners, and what is different about this is that I was also like the filmmaker for the client as well. So I didn't have to work around another behind the scenes person or be mindful of another cinematography team. Like I was both, and so I was able to do it like that. So I think ideally this is how it would be done, but that's not always the case. So I would say the first thing is communication is always key. Communicate often, communicate clearly, and if you're brought on as a behind the scenes filmmaker for a wedding planner and there's another cinematography crew there, like just being really mindful to have that open line of communication.
Yeah, so I think that what you kind of said, so maybe you are the cinematographer of the event and the planner has probably asked if you can shoot some behind the scenes. Maybe that be the day before the wedding, a couple days before the wedding, maybe when they're setting up that big beautiful sailcloth tent or whatever structure it may be. And I think that like that's one option. And then another option could be maybe the client didn't quite have the budget or the value for video, and the planner really wants to have some good video content, right? We all know that video is king on social media, Instagram specifically. And so, that might be a missed opportunity for them who conducted this design, put together this beautiful event, to be a little bit bummed that maybe the client nixed video for whatever reason it may be, and that's fine. And so they're going to bring on their own team to be able to capture that event, so that they can have that content. And then the third kind of is if the client has already hired a video team and then a vendor, whoever it may be, planner, florist, whoever, brings on their own behind the scenes video crew. And so we'll kind of I think that's the one that we want to talk about the most, because that's the one that can bring on the most opportunity for toes to be stepped on.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. And that's where communication is like totally key. I think that the first piece of etiquette comes from the person who is bringing on the behind the scenes vendor. And I think that comes with making sure it's okay and cleared with the existing like filmmaking team who is brought on by the client. Like I think that needs to be approved before moving forward and like talked about ahead of time. I think it would be what I would consider to be a pretty large faux pas if it was never discussed beforehand and you show up and like there's this like behind the scenes crew that you didn't know would be there. So I would say number one, if I know we have like actually a good amount of wedding planners who listen to this and some florists too. So if that's you and you're thinking about bringing on a behind the scenes team, which I think is great, I would just say make sure you communicate that with like the client's team and make sure it's okay with everybody. Step one.
Yes, and especially if there is an already hired professional video team that was hired by the client or brought, on by the planner, the client approved. We all know how that goes. And so, yeah, I think that, and do you kind of, Taylor, I want to ask you, like, do you have a time frame in mind on when those conversations should be happening, like a month before the wedding or less or more?
I would say I probably wouldn't need to know like more than a month ahead of time. But I think if you're getting down to like 5 days ahead of time, that feels like not enough time. So I don't know, like 2 to 4 weeks out probably is a good window. I
Yeah,
would say.
I think that
Yeah.
feels about right as well. Okay, so let's say it's been approved. There is going to be another video team. Our team is aware of it, or your team is aware of it, and we're all good. Like, thumbs up, that's fine. Happy that you have someone. Again, like, I don't think that this is a bad practice. It's very different, obviously, in the video field. And I know that we could say that, like, if we look at our contracts, and our contracts do say that we are the sole cinematographers of the event. I'm sure, Taylor, yours says that, something along those lines too.
It does.
But this is where the collaboration kind of comes in. And, and I feel like I would trust that those other vendors have an etiquette in place to where they still are mindful of us as kind of the primary filmmakers. And so that's why I'm so excited for us to have this conversation. So I think the second point is if you are a vendor who's brought on a behind the scenes video crew, or if you're a cinematographer on the event or if you are the videographer that's been brought on by the team, it's really important that you first go into this with very clear guidelines on what this means. So when we actually had a filmmaker in our summer mastermind group, and he was really, really excited about being brought on, I believe it was by the planner, to film some behind the scenes for their team. And he said, man, like, this is a level of event that I have really never been booked for by a client, and I would love to use this in my portfolio as like one of my weddings. And we said, I get that that's so tempting, but it's really just not appropriate to be turning and using that as like content that was your wedding, because it's just unfair for the hired filmmakers. Taylor, what do you think?
I 100% agree. I would say that that's probably what is the most appealing part of someone being willing. Generally, I'm going to be honest, like generally this is either like a free gig that people are doing, or it's like very low pay, like for the amount of hours that it is, right? So it's not like you're getting paid 10,000 generally, like to show up to do behind the scenes for a day, right? So I would say the draw for most people in their minds is content, right? And I would just prefer that people reframe the benefit into being more of a relationship building exercise, and connections. So, and to show your professionalism on the day where people can kind of like see how you work, and it's kind of like them vetting you when it's not like a client's project. Does that make sense? So I would say the expectation on your end as the filmmaker should be not content, it should be on relationships and a reputation. And I would go a step further in a filmmaker who is sharing content that they shot behind the scenes and they were trying to pass it off. Maybe I would say like it is them trying to pass it off as their own wedding, even if in the caption it says like I did behind the scenes. Like people like are not paying that close attention. I would say that you may be doing yourself a disservice because there's many of us in the industry who we really do have our thumb on the pulse of what's happening and vendors that we care about, and we know, like Kelly, I know both of us can like look at Instagram, look at a wedding and be like, oh, I know exactly who was on that team. It was this planner, this photographer, this cinematographer, this florist. Like we can do that with so many weddings. And I would say it will almost like it might bite you in the butt if you do it because people are going to like raise their eyebrows and like notice, right?
Right. Like you may see someone else's who was brought on by a planner, and then all of a sudden it kind of comes through in your feed somewhere and you're like, wait a second, this was Taylor's wedding. What is happening here? This is looking like it's, and so like basically I just kind of want to like what that would look like would be you filming. I just think that like the content needs to be behind the scenes focused and heavy. And if that's what you were brought on to do, you really need to stick within the parameters of that, right? So it really needs to be like heavy on like really just showcasing the behind the scenes of the team and not like all of these detail shots that doesn't have anything to do with the behind the scenes. So it'd be like posting a reel of putting together like 10 detail shots and drone shots of like the finished completed project and then putting that out there, and it just looks like it's your wedding. And whether you feel like it does that or not, it does, right? And so whatever you are putting out there, content wise, really needs to be 80-90% behind the scenes content of the team working their systems and processes, the nitty gritty of the behind the scenes, right?
100%. Yeah.
And that's what it needs to be. And so also now kind of saying that, let's talk a little bit about the etiquette on when that behind the scenes video person is kind of allowed to share. Like what is the appropriate order of posting in your opinion, Taylor?
Yeah. I would say first, privilege of posting should absolutely, as always, be client, planner, photo and video team that was hired by the client. And then I would say a generous grace window of, I mean, I would say like minimum 30 days after anyone posts anything from the wedding. But I think if you were trying to be a team player, you would wait a little longer because you want to wait for the dust to settle from that wedding and for the excitement and for a lot of like the buzz to go to the appropriate vendors who generated the buzz instead of like riding the coattails, if that makes sense. Then I think like once the dust is settled, then like by all means post like the behind the scenes stuff. And we're talking a time lapse of the tent being built and the planner adjusting linens and the flatware and the florist building that beautiful arch, like her hands actually building it, right? Like we're talking about the actual behind the scenes. And this is a small tangent, but unless you are doing behind the scenes for hair and makeup or for the attire concierge or for the like bridal gown company, like I don't think any client things should be in there at all. I don't think any bride and groom should be in the content. First of all, you probably don't have a model release from the clients anyway, so it might be inappropriate for you to share just like from a legal standpoint. But yeah, I would just say that's where the line in the sand is kind of drawn, and I would say you might be overstepping if you share those things.
Right. And would you say, even going a step further, so say we've gone through that grace window, which I actually think that grace window you said is very generous, and I mean, I like it. I don't know if people would like hold off that long because they're just so excited, but I do think that would be like the right way to go about it. If you think about it too, like that could be another opportunity for that vendor or whatever to re-stir some buzz, but on a different level. So you're showing like you're showcasing the event itself, and then it's kind of like dying down, right? Weeks later. And then maybe you're kind of stirring up like that next little wave of buzz. It's almost like being, if that wedding were featured in like Brides or Vogue or something like that, like there's a lot of buzz happening from the event, and then it kind of trickles, and then there's a lot of buzz happening again because of the publication picking it up. So same thing kind of goes for behind the scenes. So for that, Taylor, what is, maybe I could also take this one too. Would you say that like then the order goes that vendor posts and then the behind the scenes videographer has the ability to post, or do you even feel like the behind the scenes videographer should be posting at all on their behalf, or is this just something that
If
they
it's
deliver
published
to
somewhere?
yeah.
Is that what you
No,
mean?
I would say
Oh.
like just regular run of the mill wedding.
What I would do is definitely the same way you would deliver deliverables to a client before posting. Like I would treat this the same way. So making sure that your client, whoever brought you on to do behind the scenes, whether that be the florist or the planner, whoever, like they are provided with all of the things that you had agreed upon beforehand. Whether that's, a 2-minute cut or a handful of reels or whatever you had discussed, like I would deliver that first, and then I would think that it's okay to post. I wouldn't. Okay, so a lot of the time, what Kelly and I recommend is when you have a really amazing event, to leverage it, right? So we want you to share that. We want that to be like front and center everywhere. And so, but I would say it's different for behind the scenes. So if you were brought on to an incredible thing for the behind the scenes, I don't think that leveraging it in the same way applies here. Like, I think you're posting once and kind of that's it. And then maybe if you want to post again in 6 months, after a good amount of time has passed, I think it's okay to post again and again, like stressing that it is like behind the scenes. And you can even, I would say what you can leverage in those posts is the connection to the person that you shot behind the scenes for, right? So let's say
Absolutely.
I was brought on to shoot a wedding for like a top florist in the country. Like I would be like, it was such a treat to watch how so and so put together this absolutely incredible floral display, blah 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 blah. Here's a glimpse into like their process. And like I'm so happy to be able to call them a friend now. Like you can even say that. I think that's fine. And so I would say you're leveraging that relationship over the wedding itself, but really to be mindful of like not sharing it too much. I don't think that comes across very well to like be leveraging it the same level that you would your own event. So see how the rules kind of shift a little bit, and this is where having a community, having coaches, having mentors, having people that you can really bounce these ideas off of can be so incredibly helpful, because like we said at the beginning of the show, like this is kind of no man's land. This is like a brand new thing and we're all figuring it out ourselves. But there are a lot of us who have like perspectives and we've seen it. We've experienced it. We talk a lot to planners. We talk to so many planners. We talk to so many photographers. And like, I think that Kelly and I have a really great pulse on like what things are like right now. And so I think that it's great to have someone to talk to and bounce these ideas off of if you run into something like this.
Right. And also, I know it's so, so important. Your reputation is everything in this industry. Your reputation is what is going to help you ride this wave of success within the industry. And it's almost like your reputation gets more and more and more important the higher up in the industry that you are. And we're like up in like the luxury market and stuff, like everybody is like kind of buds, like Taylor said, like everyone knows what everyone else is up to. And if there's a behind the scenes video person who is stepping out of line on an event that we did, like you better believe that I've received text messages from fellow luxury filmmakers that are like, what's happening here? What's going on here? How did you handle this? This doesn't seem right. And so like I really want for those who are taking this market, it's like a marketing approach, right? It's a marketing and networking approach. Taking that very seriously, approaching it gracefully, and knowing that stepping out of line in a way that you may not even realize that you've stepped out of line can be so damaging to your career that really all you're trying to do is grow it. So that's why like we were really passionate about bringing this topic to the podcast, and we have some more things to talk about too. So so Taylor, when it comes to you've been brought on, let's say you've been brought on by a florist, how does it go with like tagging things? Like, who are you tagging? Is it appropriate to be collaborating with the rest of the team? Like, I have my own thoughts. We may have differing opinions on this, but I'd love to hear kind of where you land on that.
I don't think it's appropriate to collaborate. I think that privilege should be reserved for the actual vendor team. I think that's one of those things that's a line to not be crossed, because I think it directly does a disservice and directly like diminishes the value of the actual like team that the client hired. Does that make sense? So it's not one of those things where it's like a no harm, no foul. Like I do think there's harm and I do think there's foul. So I would not. I think it's okay to tag the person who brought you on, and that's it. You're not tagging the photographer. Oh, or you know what? I also think it's okay to tag the other cinematography team as the event cinematographers or the event filmmakers. I think that it would go like this. You post, you have your little caption, hopefully it's a good one. And then underneath it says like behind the scenes done for at handle of person who brought you on. Then like the next line, it would say event cinematographer or event filmmaker, and then you would tag them. I think that's appropriate. I don't think this is like where you're, unless it's the planner who brings you on. I don't think you're tagging the planner. You're not tagging the venue. Definitely not tagging the clients.
No. That is a big no to then tag the clients in from there. Yeah. Yes. I was gonna basically I feel the same way that you do. I like that you also said tag the event cinematographer. I probably wouldn't have thought of that, but that's a really good point. So I really do think that tagging the vendor that brought you on for BTS, and then because you guys have your own relationship, there might have been an agreement placed in there. Like I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but that is who you have the relationship with. You're not like riding the coattails and like trying to attach yourself to the team as a whole, because you didn't have an agreement with the client. Like you weren't on the conversations from the very beginning with that planner. And so like, it's just a very separate service. And so it's not a service that was a part of that entire creative team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's one of those things where if we didn't work in the event world, like this is literally the only way for them to get content of them in action. So the only choice for them to like have behind the scenes is at a real event, like for the most part. Whereas if it was a different industry, a different business, like it wouldn't be like while there's clients in the boardroom. You know what I mean? Like it would be a very back of house thing. And it just so happens that like in the event world, like a lot of things are front of house. So like if it was a catering thing, like it would never cross paths, but it just so happens that a lot of these vendors like are just front of house, you know? So that's just kind of how it naturally falls. So we have to be graceful with that. Okay, so let's switch gears here. Let's talk about let's say I am a filmmaker and it's 2 weeks out from an event, and the florist or planner reaches out and says, hey, would it be okay if I brought on this separate behind the scenes team? I just know that you're not going to have enough time to do XYZ. Is that okay with you? It is so-and-so. I would also want to know who it is. And then I say, yeah, sure. That's great. Thank you so much. And then I show up on the wedding day, and here are some things that maybe we should keep in mind when working around a behind the scenes person. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it also has to do with, I would hope that because you're going into it with the intentions of really truly filming behind the scenes, I almost, if there's another hired video team on the day, right? I almost don't really see the need for them to be filming very many completed detail shots, right?
Mm-mm.
I don't understand why that's necessary, because that's what we're gonna do. So from the eyes of the vendor, I feel like we would be doing all of that, like getting the finished product. Like that's what we were brought on to do. And so they can get that piece of content from us in that other way. Maybe we've put together like a short reel for them. And so they have that completed design from us. And then they brought on the behind the scenes video person to capture their behind the scenes. So, like, I personally feel like there really should not be very much overlap in like us and the behind the scenes video person filming at the same time or the same things, because I almost feel like there's just like there should be clear parameters on who has priority over what as well. Definitely do not, if you're brought on to shoot behind the scenes, like definitely do not make that other video team be waiting on you. Please, please, please do not get in their way. If there happens to be overlap in you both filming a similar, maybe a wide of the ballroom or whatever. But again, if I'm being completely honest, I almost don't really think that behind the scenes person needs to be filming that anyways. And I would maybe argue that like I would be, as the client hired filmmaker, I would start to be a little bit, my red flags would be going off at that point. If I see like another videographer like going heavy on those completed details, that's when I'm starting to think, okay, what else is going on here? I feel like this is a reach for content instead of just being brought on for the task of behind the scenes.
100%. So I had an event last year. It was this planner's best event of the year, and she was very excited. And she asked me if I would do behind the scenes for her, and I quoted her. And I think I quoted like kind of high because she wanted me to come out the day before and capture like the tent being installed. And it was, a few hours away. And so it was going to be a lot for me. And so I quoted high. I want to say I quoted like 5,000 or 6,000 or something for like this behind the scenes thing. And she wanted like a 5-minute film with like interviews, like the whole, you know what I mean? The whole shebang. And so she was like, ugh, that's kind of out of my budget. Okay, never mind. And so what she did was she actually did find someone to do it for free for her, because that's a common thing, and actually I really liked this process. So, we did not cross paths a single time. Not one time did we cross paths. He came, he shot the tent going up. He came at 9 a.m. when everything started being installed on the wedding day, all the things. And he left when my coverage began. And for the completed film, she did want some final like decor shots for her film, I understand. And she wanted some with like, guests in the tent and stuff. And so she said just like, hey, can you please send like, like 5 or 6 clips to this person for him to include. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, that's great. And I thought she handled it really well. I even asked, I was like, do you want me to color grade it, or do you want me to just give him raw? That way, like, his film matches. And she's like, please just raw. That way, like, and I was like, yeah, great. And like, I think that's like a clear boundary. Like, you're not going to share somebody else's like video work on Instagram. Like, that would be very strange, right? So I feel like that's like a really great way to kind of like have the person who hired the behind the scenes like get them everything they need while keeping those two roles like completely separate. So I just really appreciated that was how that was handled.
That's so good. I love to hear a good experience, because I think that this really can be a collaborative thing and serve, like I said, we are so happy that other vendors are looking for areas to, bring, be able to like do that. Like we, as Paul and I, as a team of 2, there is no way that we can, run behind the scenes for one or multiple, people. We'd probably have to bring on an additional person, if I'm being honest. And so I think that I'm happy that that's done. I just think that there needs to be clearer expectations on when toes are stepped on, because I have had a bad experience and it really did kind of like taint my vision of like how this could go. And I just think that it could have gone so much better, and it didn't need to like go sour. And I'll say too, like the planner was not happy with the outcome of what everything, like they were on our side. Like it was just kind of, it got kind of messy and it didn't need to be that way. And there could have been very, very small changes made in the entire process to have just made for like a really agreeable situation for all parties.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. So I would say, like, if you're a filmmaker you're the client's filmmaker, right? And then another team's being brought on, like, I would say to like treat them with kindness, first of all, be as collaborative as you possibly can, but also firm. So I think like kind and firm are two things that like can go hand in hand really well together. It's kind of like, this is so bad, but it's kind of like parenting. Like, you're kind but firm with your kids when you're teaching them boundaries, and the same needs to go sometimes with a situation like this. And I would say in the beginning I said like communication is everything, and communication is everything. Like, if you see something, say something, right? If they are stepping on your toes, I would say like feel free to voice your opinion. Like, I think it's okay. And just, even if you need to offer like, hey, I have this footage I already shot, or I'm going to be shooting this and I see that on the timeline there's not enough time for two teams to shoot the same thing, like, please let me know for the final edit what you need me to send you and I can help you with that. You know what I mean? There's ways you can kind of go about it where you're being collaborative but you're also protecting your own like creative processes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be hard, guys. It can be hard anytime. We've all even been on, weddings where there's 5 photographers, and like going from 2 shooters to 3 shooters to 4, like every added body complicates it a tiny, tiny bit, like each one, and so even this complicates it a little bit more. So we're all kind of navigating it together. We all actually, you know what, if you're listening to this and you have any like input or ideas or opinions, go over to our Instagram. We're at the Level Up Co. and find the post that is in accordance with this one. This one is going to be episode 131, I think. And comment on that post and let us know like your thoughts here, because we would love to like have a conversation about this.
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing conversation. Again, it's such a new concept, and as we start to see it more and more, and other filmmakers have more and more, we just have more experience with seeing this. I think that like etiquettes will slightly change, or like, things will be kind of, I don't know, like the rule book might change a little bit as things continue in this way. So I don't know. I just think that we should keep this conversation going and talk about it a little bit more than just this podcast episode. So if you liked this episode too, like, we love when we see our fellow listeners sharing on Instagram. I think this will be one that a lot of people are gonna want to listen to because it's such a new thing. And so share it. And again, we'd love to hear your feedback as well, additional thoughts that you have. And we just hope that this was really helpful for you guys in navigating maybe a new opportunity that's set your way in 2024, or maybe, you learned from this and you're going to go in with better practices next time you are the hired behind the scenes filmmaker too.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us reach more filmmakers just like you by taking a screenshot and sharing it on social media. Don't forget to tag us at The Level Up Co.
And join us again next week, same time, same place, as we continue to level up the industry together.